Morning, security gang, and welcome back to the CyberHub Podcast. James Azar here, host and Chief Information Security Officer. Thank you for tuning in this Wednesday morning, February 25th, 2026. And we've got a packed show for all of y'all today. Also, it's Wednesday, and we beat Canada in hockey. We pretty much own Canada at this point. I think when we own your national sport, just do what the French do and just surrender. I'm kidding. I'm joking. My Canadian friends, you guys are absolutely fantastic. And so, again, we dominated hockey. The Canadians won't live this one down for quite some time, and we shouldn't let them. Should constantly remind them of that. All right. We've got a packed show today, folks. We're talking about 12.4 million car gurus accounts exposed, Wynn Resorts confirming an employee data breach tied to an extortion, ransomware hammering financial institution, North Korea's Lazarus group being linked to the Medusa ransomware gang. All of that, including sanctions and so much more on today's show. Let's get right into it. But before we do, I've got my double espresso this morning. It's absolutely fantastic. Coffee cup cheers, y'all. One thing I love about that glass, by the way, that was this. What I'm drinking this morning is the Black Rifle Coffee Nespresso pods. Now, I've had them before on the show about a month ago, and I didn't like them. Someone reached out to me, and they were like, "Try this." So I ordered it. It's good. It's all right. It's not Lavazza. It's not Illy, but it's all right. I'll take it. Like, I've had worse espresso, aka Starbucks. It's okay. I'll just say that. All right. Let's get into this one impacting car gurus that are now disclosing a breach impacting 12.4 million user accounts. According to reporting, the exposed information included names, email addresses, and even possibly hashed passwords and account details. And while financial data wasn't immediately confirmed as leaked, a data set of that scale is a goldmine for credential stuffing, phishing, and identity fraud. The likely root cause appears to be tied to an unauthorized database access, potentially from compromised credentials or misconfigured storage infrastructure. At this size, the blast radius is global. It's more national at this one, with the risk being large-scale credential reuse attacks against other platforms. And if you're car gurus, or if you're a car gurus customer, you've used it before, anything like that, you should, reset all your passwords and validate all active user sessions and set up MFA while you're at it. Now, Have I Been Pawned said it's 12.4 million records. And again, physical addresses, user financial pre-qualification application data, financial application outcomes, and even dealer account details, as well as some subscription information. This is, by the way, courtesy of ShinyHunters, who continue to wreak havoc across organizations everywhere in the world. Wynn results in Las Vegas confirming an employee data breach after attackers issued an extortion threat. The breach reportedly exposed employee personal information, possibly including social security numbers and HR records. Unlike encryption-first ransomware, this appears to be a data exfiltration followed by coercion. Employee data sets are particularly sensitive due to insider threat potential and payroll fraud risks, with the risker being targeted payroll fraud and insider impersonation attacks. To mitigate against threats like this one, you should be deploying additional payroll transaction verification controls if you have affected employees in your population to do this. Additionally, treat employee data like you would customer data. I'm not saying Wynn didn't do this, but it's likely that the system that was compromised didn't have the same amount of control there. And again, this could have came from Oracle's systems too. We just don't know that for sure. Let's move to our next story this morning. New reporting is highlighting a sharp increase in ransomware attacks targeting financial institutions. The threat actors are exploiting legacy systems, weak segmentation, and even third-party service providers to gain footholds within financial institutions who face a double threat: operational disruption and regulatory exposure. Attackers that understand that financial downtime translates into immediate leverage are using that as a key to continue to target financial organizations, with the data here showing 65% of financial organizations being hit by ransomware in 2024. That's the highest rate across industries, with the average recovery cost, excluding ransoms, reaching nearly $8 million. This is coming from any run type of data. The risk here, again, is systematic financial service disruption, which could impact consumer trust and the economy. And if you're in financial services, like yours truly was for many, many years, you want to implement continuous red teaming exercise, simulating ransomware and high value transaction systems. You want to really lock down your systems from ransomware to the core. And what I would do is I would quadruple our endpoints, right? So I would identify our operating crown jewels. And those operating crown jewels would typically have a set of tools built into them. Obviously, your traditional EDR, MDR. It would have user behavior analytics types of, kind of the next gen AV per se, like stuff that's out there that really just targets the behavior of ransomware, whether it be on the kernel, something like a Mimic or a Halcyon. You've really got to lock down your crown jewels, and that way, if anything happens, it's happening on the outskirts and it's limited in scope. So you're really limiting your blast radius by really protecting your crown jewels to the max, and then additionally, you're kind of leaving the outer layer and the non-functional data per se as something there, and you can justify that to the regulator. But if you lose your crown jewels, I think you're going to have a hard time justifying that to the regulator and your boss after the fact. Our next story is a large phishing campaign that's targeting freight and logistics organizations across the US and Europe. Attackers are impersonating partners using shipment documentation themes, tricking recipients into downloading malware. Logistic firms are attractive because they bridge supply chains and hold access to customs and financial records. And when you have supply chain infiltration, that could lead to downstream compromise of partners. And that's a real risk because it could impact a lot of things downstream, from the loss of real product, meaning we've talked about this on the show before, where attackers were actually hacking these logistics companies and they were rerouting shipments to their own warehouses, and that inventory would drop. And then by the time they've realized the inventory's gone, the warehouse is burnt, right? Like they're out of there. And so is the inventory. That's one aspect of it. Additionally, they could try to impact supply chains in order to gain some investment leverage within the marketplace. Mitigating against this types of threats does require sandbox detonations of all email attachments containing shipment or invoice documentation. You should have some sort of workflow or process that validates any changes of shipments once they've left the warehouse, that it requires some sort of voice validation or some sort of internal communication system that an attacker wouldn't be able to get their hands on, that's segmented from your from your logistics platform as well. That can go a long way there. Let's move to some vulnerabilities. The VMware ARIA systems are now with a new CVE 2026-22719er. The vulnerability in the VM ARIA operations could allow remote code execution, but only under certain conditions. The product is commonly used for infrastructure monitoring, meaning compromise could provide attackers with visibility into and even control enterprise workloads. Exploitation could allow adversaries to pivot deeper into your VM environments, with the risk being infrastructure-wide compromise through monitoring platforms themselves, which what they're supposed to do is tell you if someone's doing it. You should be restricting ARIA operation management interfaces to your private networks with IP allow listing, and you should do that behind all of your management platforms, irregardless to whether or not there's a vulnerability. That's just a really, really good practice, by the way. So several CVEs for this one: 2026-22720, 22721, and you should patch to versions 9.0.2.0 of the VMware Cloud Foundation and VMware vSphere Foundation, and 8.18.6 for ARIA operation to mitigate these threats. Let's move to GitHub, where researchers are demonstrating how GitHub issues can be abused in a Copilot assisted attack chain to manipulate repositories. By embedding malicious prompts or instructions, attackers can influence AI generated code or even maintainers' actions. This does blend social engineering with AI assisted development workflows. Source code compromise through AI influence workflows is a real risk. To mitigate this one, you should be enforcing manual code review for all AI assisted pull requests before you merge the branches. That'll help you out there a ton in limiting this risk. We go to our friends over in North Korea. Well, are they friends? But North Korea's Lazarus group has reportedly been linked to the Medusa ransomware operations. This blurs the line between state-sponsored cyber operations and financially motivated ransomware campaigns. And again, this geopolitical cyber gangs, cyber crime is getting really, really intertwined, and even more so this year. The reason for it is the tightening of the noose, the decentralization, the ability to really start punching back, the kind of change of the guard in terms of cyber philosophy globally. It's really tightening the noose. And now, what we used to say, well, that's Medusa. They're not state sponsored. They're a criminal gang. Well, now we know they're not. They're actually state sponsored. And they kind of wear two hats per se, like most people in startups do. Lazarus has historically mixed espionage with revenue generation, often to fund the North Korean regime activities. Ransomwares like this being used as both criminal enterprise and state funding mechanisms are a real risk because they really kind of blur the lines that you think you're kind of playing in, and you should never establish any lines when you're dealing with cyber criminals. To mitigate this one, you should be enhancing your blockchain tracing and financial monitoring of ransomware payments in your environments. You should also be working with law enforcement in the event you're hit with something in order to make sure that's all there. All right, we'll move to some news in terms of fighting transnational gangs behind some of these Southeast Asian scam compounds. The U.S. is reaffirming its commitment to combating scam compounds operating in Southeast Asia, where organized criminal networks run large-scale fraud operations. These centers conduct phishing, romance scams, and even business email compromise schemes globally. The geopolitical dimension is that these compounds operate in loosely governed regions in parts of Southeast Asia, with the risk being industrial-scale fraud pipelines targeting Western consumers, bleeding them of their hard-earned money. And so you should be looking, and you should have your team hunt for any sort of cross-border intel sharing and scam infrastructure IP ranges. That should be part of your in like education of your teams inside the business. Goes a long way to helping there. All right, the UK ICO finding Reddit £14.47 million, or the equivalent of $20 million for data protection violations. Regulators determining failures tied to privacy and user data handling practices. The fine does reflect growing enforcement around platform data governance and compliance obligations, with the risk being escalating regulatory penalties for data governance failure. You should be conducting annual third-party audits of your data protection controls if you operate in regions where you know they're going to essentially target you for their shortcomings or for any of your data stuff there as well. I mean, 50 million for 20 million for Reddit is nothing here. All right, and final story here. Sanctions have been issued against a Russian exploit broker accused of supplying zero-day vulnerabilities to threat actors. The exploit brokers plays a critical role in the offensive ecosystem. The sanctions are around Russian national Sergei Sergeyevich Zeleniak and his St. Petersburg headquarter company Operation Zero, as well as 5 other associated people and entities. The Russian company was involved in the case of Peter Williams, an Australian national who formerly led Trencha in the division of the defense contractor L3 that deals with spyware and zero-day vulnerabilities. He pled guilty to 2 counts of theft and trade secrets in October after he was accused of selling national security software that included at least 8 sensitive and protected cyber exploit components that were only supposed to be sold to the U.S. government and approved allies. So, Operation Zero there. Zelniak has bought and sold exploits since 2021, offering millions to cybersecurity researchers for exclusive vulnerability that could be exploited on commonly used software. The Treasury also sanctioned Zelniak's assistant, Marina Evgeneva Vanasnovich, the UAE-based affiliate STS, Oleg Vainolovich Korchov, an alleged member of the long-running TrickBot Krang, as well as several others there. The company's, looking at another associated offensive cybersecurity company, Advanced Security Solutions, was included in the sanctions, also for its role in bounties for exploiting U.S. software companies allegedly controlled by Azizjan Makamadovich Mamasayevich, and it's run out of the UAE and Uzbekistan. The UAE obviously breeding ground for these criminals who go there for the lifestyle and the corruption that they can get away with there as well, in terms of operating there as kind of semi-legitimate while laundering funds through the place. It used to be Doha a decade ago. Now it's the UAE. All right, that's it for our show this morning. We'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern with all the latest. Until then, thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to follow, share, subscribe, comment. Check out CyberHubPodcast.com for all the latest and exclusive content. And most importantly, y'all, stay cyber.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.